What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about field of view in Warzone and just how important it is, because as of right now at least, only one of the three platforms that play together in crossplay lobbies has the ability to change their field of view. And that is PC, of course. For all consoles, you are currently locked at an 80 FOV, and that can't be changed. And lately I've been seeing more and more people in the community, primarily PC players, seemingly try to downplay the power and importance of having a higher FOV in Warzone. Now, I did have a little exchange on Twitter yesterday about this with somebody, and I'm not just referring to that conversation. I've been seeing this pop up fairly frequently in the community, where a lot of PC players are claiming that a field of view slider doesn't really give you that much of an advantage, and it's not a big deal that only they have access to it, and the consoles currently don't. So in today's video, I did want to discuss field of view and just how important I feel it is for the gameplay of Warzone. And before we dive too deep into the discussion here, I did want to mention that it looks like we will likely be seeing a field of view slider on console at some point in the future for Warzone. Now at this point, we don't know if that's only going to apply to the new generation of consoles or also the old generation, but before Season 3, I was fortunate enough to attend a Zoom meeting with a few of the Warzone developers, and in that we had a little Q&A period at the end, and when asked about the potential for a field of view slider for consoles in the future, Amos Hodge from Ravens said, "This is something we're aware the community wants, and we're definitely looking at it for the future, but we've got no concrete plans I can comment on." So from the sounds of this, it is something that we can likely expect at some point going forward on console in Warzone, but at least at the time of that meeting, which again was before Season 3, so this was already quite some time ago, they didn't have any concrete plans for it. So I'm hoping they've made a lot of progress already. I wouldn't even expect this for Season 4 or anything, but who knows, that could be a nice surprise for Season 4. In either case, it is looking pretty promising. We will likely be seeing an FOV slider on console at some point. But until then, I strongly feel that this is one of the biggest advantages that PC has over console. I often see people lumping FOV slider in with like a higher frame rate that PC players get, or all of their really detailed graphic settings that they can work through like anti-aliasing and all those little details that we can't adjust on console. But I think an FOV slider goes far beyond those settings. And my reasoning behind this is an FOV slider can actually change how you approach situations and how you approach your gameplay, whereas with those other settings, while it is nice to optimize certain areas, they aren't really the types of things that will change how you play the game or how you approach situations. So this is why I consider an FOV slider to be a gameplay feature, whereas the others are just graphics features. And I really feel that having an FOV slider is a huge advantage and one of the biggest things that separates PC from console in Warzone. Now don't get me wrong, I in no way think that giving a bad player an FOV slider will suddenly make them a good player. That simply isn't going to happen. Also, I think a lot of people don't understand that there are diminishing returns when it comes to having a higher FOV. And the simple reason for this is the higher your field of view is, the smaller objects will appear, and that includes enemy players. And this is why you don't tend to see top players playing on 120 FOV, which is the maximum setting for PC. Instead, most of them seem to fall somewhere around 100 to 110 FOV, so there does appear to be a sweet spot here, and having 120 FOV isn't necessarily always going to give you an advantage. Having said that though, that sweet spot of around 100 to 110 is significantly higher than what we are getting on console, which is 80. I don't know of any PC players that take this game seriously that actively choose to play on an 80 FOV. And I'm just going to show some examples in the background of me traversing the map or standing in a certain situation on an 80 FOV compared to 105 FOV, which is my preferred setting in Warzone after dabbling a little bit with PC. And what I've personally noticed after dabbling on PC a little bit and having this higher FOV is it actually changed up my gameplay. It changed how I felt about the game, and I just felt so much more free in the game. I didn't feel nearly as paranoid as I normally feel while playing Warzone. And the reason for this is having that higher FOV gives you access to more information at any given time, and of course, you're using that information to make decisions on your gameplay. The more information you have, the more comfortable you can be making the right decision. When I play on console, if I'm crossing an open area, I'm constantly like zigzagging and checking left and right to make sure I'm checking all of the different potential threat areas where I expect enemies may be coming from. Whereas when I have my higher FOV on PC, I don't have to do all of those constant movements and swaying left and right and back and forth, checking everywhere constantly. I feel like I can just run from point A to point B, and I can already see all of those potential threat areas and monitor them at any given time. So this right here provides a big gameplay advantage and a whole lot of confidence as well when moving around the map. Now on top of this, there are a few other benefits to an FOV slider, and the first thing is it can reduce the visual effects of recoil on guns. And this is just going to happen due to the way that perspective works. The closer you are to your gun, which is going to be shaking around as you shoot it, the more of that shake you're going to be noticing. If you're farther away, it's not going to appear to be shaking as much. And the same thing goes with the actual camera or your screen, which moves around as you're firing your gun. If you have more of a zoomed out perspective, you're not going to notice that shake as much as if you're zoomed in super far. And this can give the feeling of reduced recoil. And it does actually give you a better picture of what's going on as you're actively firing your gun, because you don't have to compensate for all of that crazy camera movement that you're getting while firing your gun. Additionally, another benefit to an FOV slider that is purely psychological, but it's still something I noticed, and it just makes the game feel better. This is the fact that when you have a higher FOV, it feels like you're moving around the map faster. Now, you don't actually move around the map any faster than people on a low FOV, but for many people, if they go from playing on a high FOV to a low FOV, it suddenly makes the game feel a lot more clunky, and it feels like you're trying to run in quicksand or something. It feels like you're being held back. It feels slower. Whereas with a higher FOV, things just feel a lot more fast and fluid. Now again, that's something that's purely psychological, and it really just comes down to feel. That area isn't necessarily going to improve your gameplay at all, but it could improve your impression of the game and your enjoyment of the game. So when you combine all of these advantages that you get with an FOV slider, and then look at the fact that 1 out of 3 platforms has access to this, and all of those platforms are playing together, it really makes me question the competitive integrity in cross-play lobbies. Now, obviously, there are bigger issues like hacking, for instance, and the insufficient anti-cheat that they currently have, but just because there are bigger issues doesn't mean we can't talk about other issues that are existing currently. And I think this discrepancy in FOV between console and PC really does give an unfair advantage to PC players over console players. And this is on top of a bunch of other little advantages that PC has, like the ability to change all those graphics settings, and the ability to get a higher frame rate, and in many cases, a higher resolution. All of those things I can live with though. Like I said earlier, those aren't the types of things that actually affect how you play the game or how you approach situations, whereas the FOV slider absolutely does. And I would have no issue with this whatsoever if we weren't all playing in the same lobbies. If we had console-only crossplay and then PC was its own separate thing, there'd be no issue here. I mean, I'd still want to see an FOV slider on console, but it wouldn't be a very pressing issue. It wouldn't be that big of a deal because at least everybody's playing on a fair and even playing field. Whereas as it is currently, it's not a fair and even playing field between a PC and a console. And it's for this reason alone that I recently dropped a ton of cash to get a very solid gaming PC. It's literally just for Warzone. And unfortunately, it looks like I won't be getting that PC for another month or so. And until then, I am going to be primarily sticking to console, especially while I'm streaming, because my current PC, I just can't get a decent enough frame rate while also streaming from the same PC. But yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this and also share the fact that after dabbling with PC with a higher FOV, it really does feel like I'm playing a different game. And I don't feel like you should have to invest a bunch of extra money to get a solid gaming PC if you're a console player. I think console players should have access to the exact same gameplay features as any other platform that they're playing in the same lobby against. And that's really the primary point of this video. Let's hope that this FOV slider comes to consoles sooner rather than later. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily expect it for Season 4, but who knows? Maybe we'll be surprised, or maybe we'll see it in like Season 5 or something. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Now, I'd really like to hear from you guys in the comment section below, specifically the people that have played on both platforms or both levels of FOV in Warzone. What was your experience going from an 80 FOV up to a higher FOV, whichever FOV it is that you are most comfortable with? Do you really think it does provide a noticeable advantage, and do you think the gameplay just feels better overall once you have that higher FOV? Or do you still think it's just really not that big of a deal and you'd have no problem switching back to an 80 FOV? Just let me know those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.